This is the Timbo Slice podcast featuring Jordan, episode 1.
Awesome. So we're finally doing this, Jordan. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here too, talking into this interesting looking Blue Yeti microphone.
Yeah. So, I've wanted to do this since I started, listening to Joe Rogan, listening to Jocko Willink, Dave Rubin, all those guys who do their own long form conversation on YouTube or on their podcasts. And, I've just been interested in getting started, giving it a shot, seeing what it's like.
And I'll do pretty much anything that Tim wants me to do. So here I am.
Awesome.
He bought the Blue Yeti.
Yeah.
Blue Yeti, if you'd like to sponsor us, we will gladly receive your sponsorship.
Send us free stuff. So, one thing we were just talking about before we started recording was the podcast that I was watching last night, which featured Dave Rubin and Jocko Willink. And during the interview, Dave Rubin asked Jocko to rate Donald Trump on his leadership. So for those of you who don't know, Jocko, he's a big leadership consultant, a former Navy SEAL. He's written a bunch of awesome books on the topic. And so I felt it was a very relevant question for a man like him to answer. And basically his response was that a leader is somebody who you respect, who you want to follow, and who you want to emulate. And he did not rate Donald Trump very highly in any of those categories, and therefore I think accurately judged him to be not a great leader. What are your thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, I live in Utah, where Donald Trump finished last in the Republican primary, but still managed to carry the state easily, and maybe that's just Hillary's fault. But everyone that I talk to that thinks Trump is doing a great job as president is very quick to qualify their endorsement or their approval not to include his values or his personal life. So it seems like everybody that I talk to anyway is quick to put a little bit of distance between themselves and the president. They like his policies, but there are lots of things about him that they don't like. I don't think anyone would say that his character is one that they want to emulate.
I definitely agree. One of the things that Jocko pointed out was sometimes Donald Trump will do something where you might feel like, he actually made a good decision. He actually did something right. But then 20 minutes later, he's tweeting like a high schooler, like insulting a celebrity online or whatever. And it's just, it's odd for somebody who holds that office to be engaging in that kind of behavior. It shows a lack of discipline, lack of respect. Not the kind of person that you would consider a role model. And why shouldn't the president of the United States be a role model? I think that would be a good measure of whether or not they're worthy to lead the country.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Britishers, the people of England, I'm not sure how to refer to them correctly. They all love the Queen, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think she does a whole lot politically. So if Donald Trump could be like the Queen of England in his personal life, that would make him a better leader. Get some corgis and wear corgi sweaters and the other stuff the Queen does that make people like her.
Is that what she does?
I know those are things that people like about the Queen. I don't follow the royal family very closely.
Me neither.
It just seems like the opposite side of the coin, right? You've got Trump where his policies, lots of conservatives agree with. They like what he does politically, but they don't like a whole lot else about him. Whereas the Queen, there aren't really any policies to disagree with because she's not a policy leader. She's just a governmental figure that people admire and like. And
right. In a way, though, I think that makes it easier to not be disliked. If you're not actually making decisions, you're not actually doing anything, then it's easy to be popular, right? Anytime you change something, anytime you make a decision, there are going to be people that you that you ruin things for, I guess you could say. Like, anytime something changes, there are going to be winners and losers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so,
yeah, that's true. If you're a person that gets to make hard choices, then there are going to be a significant number of people that don't like you.
Yeah.
And will disagree with you loudly. And they might even be the president and say mean things about you on Twitter, right?
It's true. Definitely.
I met a guy that is DMing yesterday at work in Riverton.
Really?
Yeah, just to give our listeners context. Hi, Mom. And my mom already knows where I work. I work so the department is named Information Communication Services. Everybody calls it ICS. And it is a subsidiary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is their software arm. So I was in the cafeteria yesterday and met a fellow named Dan, who's been a dungeon master for 2.5 years for a campaign that he's been running.
At work. Huh?
Yeah, at work every Monday.
That's some longevity. That's good.
They play for an hour. Yeah, that's remarkable, right? Like normally D&D campaigns, like if they last 1 or 2 months, you're lucky.
Yeah.
And if everybody shows up, right, for every session of those 1 or 2 months, you're lucky. And from what he said, it sounds like people are always there, or even if people are absent, they have enough people in the rotating group that there's always a significant group.
Wow.
When they play on
Sounds
Monday.
awesome.
Yeah, so he was sitting at a table in the lunchroom, the cafeteria, with his laptop open, and I asked him if he was working on something pressing. He says, why else would you have your laptop open in the cafeteria? And he said, no, I'm just working on my D&D campaign, which was surprising. You know, given the context, you might not expect to encounter a dungeon master there. But I did. And the story behind his campaign was interesting, too. So he, I think, was in charge of putting together a team-building activity, or if he wasn't in charge, he felt like he needed to give his input or something, and he felt like, not that there was any discord on the team, but that there wasn't, the relationships weren't that close, right? Like they were strangers working on the same project separately. I don't know how to explain that well, but I think it's experience lots of people have in their offices. And he wanted to pick something for the team building activity, you know, that would actually build the team, that would build those relationships so that they could talk to each other and be more cohesive. And he knew, I think it was an older guy on the team, I don't know how old, but he'd mentioned once or twice that he'd played D&D when he was younger.
Nice.
And I guess that's how he got the idea. So he Googled, I'm not sure what it was, like D&D campaign or something. And the one that he mentioned to me, I don't know if it was the first result or what, was Tomb of Horrors.
Oh, yes.
Have you played Tomb
I haven't
of
actually
Horrors?
played that one, but I am somewhat familiar with it. That's actually the module that is featured in the book Ready Player One. Did you read that one?
Yeah, he referenced that too.
Yeah.
So I think that's also where he got the idea. So he'd read Ready Player One. And so he'd asked this other fellow if he'd ever played Tomb of Horrors. And he said, no, I haven't, but I really wanted to, and I never got to. So they didn't do Tomb of Horrors. I'm not sure what they did, what kind of characters they rolled, and what they've been doing for the past 2.5 years. But it must have been good because they keep playing and they have a big group.
So the real question here is, are you going to join them?
No.
That's what all the fans are wondering. And why not?
Why am I not going to join them?
Are you not a team player, Jordan?
Well, it's because of my peculiar views on the subject of violence. I'm essentially a hippie where violence is concerned. I try to avoid it in any shape or form that it might appear.
You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like a good character archetype for you.
Sure.
How about you play the bard that's supportive, that heals, that, you know, uses all sorts of out of combat
That's true.
skills or techniques to, you know, avoid violence and steers their group to, you know, more peaceful resolutions.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, dude.
I could do that. The next time I'm near Dan's work area, I'll ask him if I can join the campaign as the
pacifist bard.
the vocal pacifist. That'll be my character. We'll see what he says.
Druid can also work for that too. Someone who respects life.
Yeah, I think most of the fun in playing Dungeons and Dragons, and full disclosure here, I haven't played in over a decade. Right,
Ooh.
I was in high school and I had no bald spot the last time I played Dungeons and Dragons. But it seems like, the role-playing, just that extemporaneous improvisation role-playing stuff that would happen was the most fun and the most memories. But I don't know, it seems like most of the time that you spent on your own when you weren't in your campaign, just thinking about D&D, was looking up rules and thinking about stats and junk and gear, looking through books and stuff. So there is a pull, right, to focus on that when you play. And there is a feeling like we have to kill something this session or we didn't really play.
It's true. We just played yesterday. We're doing a similar thing where the Android team actually, for one of their team building activities, did a D&D session, and then everyone was like, let's continue, let's do this every week. And so I actually joined them yesterday, and we did our first session. It was an hour, mostly, getting the party together, doing a simple quest, and there wasn't a single fight the whole time. And at the end, the DM apologized for not having a combat encounter. We're like, no way, dude, this was awesome. This was fun. And we just RP'd the whole time, and it was great. But yeah, I think there is typically an expectation that there will be combat. I mean, most characters in the game have tons of skills that only apply to combat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, there are a lot of non-combat skills and stats and everything you can get to, but if you don't include that, typically you're missing out on a big part of the game. So, but again, you could, like I said before, you could make a bard that has heal spells, charm person, all sorts of stuff like that. Non-violent, the non-violent toolkit, right?
It makes for an interesting setting, right? It's an interesting world. Where, especially when violence is the norm, or where violence is commonplace. So the D&D world is definitely that. To have somebody, that for compelling reasons is different.
Right. I mean, even in our own world, in reality, you can avoid violence as much, as possible through your own actions, but that doesn't mean it'll never happen, right? It doesn't mean you can completely avoid it your entire life. So it's useful to have those skills in real life too, the ability to diffuse a situation or talk your way out of something or de-escalate or, so even in the D&D world too, that can be a part of the game. You could find a role for yourself in a party, in a story, being that kind of a person. And I don't think it's out of place, and I think it would be interesting. I mean, the character I'm playing right now he's an illusionist that is basically focused on influencing people in an indirect way, if that makes sense. Because, you have the option always to turn to violence, to, somebody's a bad guy doing bad things, you go in there and throw a fireball in his face, right? That's always an option. But playing as an illusionist now, you have to be more subtle, less direct. So maybe you break into his room in the middle of the night and do the whole Darth Vader thing, like in Back to the Future, right? You scare somebody straight, right? So as an illusionist, I could, set up an elaborate scheme to make somebody believe something different or to deceive them or change their mind.
You're talking about Inception, Tim?
Yeah,
too dangerous.
Basically, except without going into their dreams, right? So it is a lot harder to come up with an effective plan and pull it off. But I think it's interesting though. If you could, let's say you go into a city and the local magistrate there is a total jerk and he's torturing people and killing them. The standard adventure response is go in there, kick the door down, fireball him in the face, stab him in the back, whatever. He's dead. Cool. We grab the loot and move on, But there are all sorts of problems with that. Number one, like it could create a power vacuum. You have to worry about moral issues like, are we any better than him if we just take random doors down and kill people because they're doing things we don't like? That sort of thing. Whereas if you come in, let's say as an illusionist, for example, and you set up something elaborate that, maybe you show him the image of his dead mother, or like some kind of demon that's coming for his soul, like the whole what's the word? The Christmas Carol. Yeah, the whole Christmas Carol. The ghost of Christmas past, present, future, right? You do that thing on him, and then now all of a sudden you turn him into a good guy. Now you have a good leader.
Yeah. Well, you'll talk about that section in Campaign Forever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Remember the one where we did the Christmas Carol thing?
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing I'm going for with this character this time, and I think it'll be really interesting. But, these kinds of options are always available. That's what makes D&D really, really fun, is that by not being in a traditional computer video game, and I say that traditional, it's kind of weird because, pen and paper came before video games, but in a video game, you're typically limited by what has been coded, what has been added to the game, right? If somebody hasn't added a separate continent into the game's map, you can't go there, right? And if there is no ability to fireball somebody in the face, then you can't fireball somebody in the face because it doesn't exist in the game. But at the same time, because you're creating that world that with rules, that also empowers you in a way. Because it is a way of kind of creating that virtual world that's a little bit more tangible than just your imagination, right? However, you go to the pen and paper side, and so you kind of lose the virtual world, but you also shed all the boundaries that are put in place by the decisions made for the game systems, for the game's content. And so it does take a little bit more work on the part of the player to imagine everything and to come up with solutions or ideas. But the fact that there's no artificial boundary on what you can do is what I think makes the tabletop experience really interesting. And of course, there are rules to govern the world and what you can and can't do to a degree, but still, anything that you can imagine and that your character can actually pull off is basically on the table, and that's awesome.
I'll say.
So you're totally going to play, right?
We'll see.
Dude, you got to sign up, man. Join that group.
I'll ask Dan if I can join as a pacifist bard. See what he says. They might be going through the Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah. That might be a little bit harder to be a pacifist when, you're fighting mindless undead. But, you could always do supporting stuff like healing or, playing a song that boosts your comrades' combat abilities. That sort of thing. So I think there's still opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. People have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for longer than they've been playing Minecraft even.
Oh, yeah.
My brother is getting kind of sick of Minecraft. He doesn't play anymore, but his daughter plays and my son likes to play. So he gets to see a fair amount of Minecraft, even though he doesn't play anymore. And he'll often comment that he doesn't play Minecraft anymore because there's nothing he wants to do in the game, right? Like they can add horses and turtles and seaweed and all of that, but none of that stuff captures his imagination. So Minecraft, does a great job of being open worldy and sandboxy and whatever you want. But at the same time, it's whatever you want within the context of Minecraft.
Right.
And you can add mods and stuff, but maybe there's no mod that will offer you the gameplay experience you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And Dungeons and Dragons still offers that.
Right. And, that's kind of what I was trying to explain earlier with the fact that rules can be empowering, right? In Minecraft's case, a lot of people find that because nothing is really defined for them to do, it's a little bit too much of a sandbox. It's like how most people will find playing basketball more fun than just going out into an unmarked court with, no rules and just messing around, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that organization into a game by imposing rules and restrictions that starts to make it interesting, right? So there's an interesting balance there where freedom to do whatever you want is kind of in tension with the rules that actually formulate a game or a system in which you can compete or enjoy yourself, right? So yeah, I definitely think that Minecraft is made more interesting by mods for that reason. I think I've told you about one before. There's like a mod pack called Feed the Beast that adds in just tons of stuff, and the thing that appeals to me is the technology aspect, where you can create machines and use those machines to essentially create factories, and you basically turn the game into one where you're not just walking around with a pickaxe hitting stuff yourself, like your own individual manpower. You go beyond that, so you're making a quarry, and then you have like pneumatic pipes that sort and filter everything at quarries automatically, and you have a power plant to power everything, and so you create all these elaborate systems that work together in order to build up your technology, and I find that very, very fun. Maybe you say your brother?
Yeah.
Maybe you should try that one. I think it's great. But I mean, if you're into that kind of stuff, there are other games too that probably do it better. Like everyone's raving about Factorio these days. It's one that's like specifically oriented around making efficient factories. But I played another one, a survival crafting game over spring break while I had the time off with my kids, called Subnautica. Man, that game is very interesting. So the crafting is very lightweight, and it has survival aspects like you have to eat and you have to drink. But man, what was really interesting about the game is it takes place pretty much entirely underwater and on an alien planet, and you're on a planet where the sea creatures, the predators, are much larger than they are on our planet. And I don't know about you, but I tend to find the ocean terrifying.
Yeah. There's all that dark water.
Right.
Who knows what's under
Exactly.
here?
Not only that, but like humans are not well equipped to be able to defend themselves or even escape in the water, right?
No.
Not at all. So
we're not great fighters in any environment.
But
it's even worse in the water.
Worse in the water. And so I think the game does a great job of taking that like psychological aspect of humanity and kind of forcing you to face it. Because the game does actually have a storyline. Essentially, you crash land there, and you're the only survivor, and you need to get off the planet. You need to survive long enough to build enough technology to launch yourself, Matt Damon style, off of Mars. Have you seen that movie, The Martian?
I thought they had to come back and get him.
They did, but he had to get off the planet into orbit for them to catch him.
Oh,
and
okay.
You have a similar situation here. You have to get off the planet in order to be rescued. And so in order to get yourself to that point, you have to survive and face your fears essentially in the depths of the ocean. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
My brother really liked The Island. You heard of that one?
A game?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
It's kind of survival horror crafting. Said it was made by a handful of people. Kind of like Witcher. Isn't that a product of some country?
Poland?
Yeah.
Like that's where the author. Wait. No, that's where the game studio CD Projekt Red is. I think they're in Poland. I don't remember if that's where the author who wrote the series is from. Too.
Yeah.
I think he is, though.
I got incomplete information. Anyway, it's one of those where it's a smaller team. Maybe The Witcher isn't a smaller team.
It's not huge, but I wouldn't call it small either. I wouldn't call it indie.
It's survival crafting. You'd say survival horror crafting.
Interesting.
The monsters are scarier than the creepers and the skeletons.
Yeah.
The pig zombies. So he still likes the survival crafting thing, just not the Minecraft flavor.
I do like the genre myself. Maybe I'll check it out.
I think there is a goal, though. You're trying to... So I think, like, you're in a plane crash or your boat sank or something. You and your son are on some island, and your son is kidnapped by the monsters, and you go to
Really?
save him. Yeah. So I think it does have an end.
Interesting.
So, maybe Minecraft just needs a more compelling end or something. I don't know. Enough about Minecraft.
Yeah.
This is not the Minecraft podcast. Getting back to violence and interesting characters that surround the theme of violence. Brandon Mull wrote a book called well, there's more than one now, but Candy Shop Wars. There's a character in the book called John Dart. He's kind of the main muscle or the main henchman for one of the chief wizards in the book. And John Dart has some curse or something where whatever he does violence-wise to another person, he experiences it himself.
Interesting.
So if he punches somebody in the face, he feels like he's been punched in the face. And yeah, it was interesting. So he, one of his jobs was to like arrest rogue wizards, right? He's like the police. So he had handcuffs and straitjackets and stuff and gases and stuff that he would use that would like make you nauseous and stuff. One scene in the book he uses, it's like some sort of gas grenade or something, which incapacitates this magician, whatever, that he's trying to capture. I think the other person is retching, and he feels awful too, but he's kind of accustomed to it. You know, he can just muscle through it. And yeah, that was really compelling, right? To have some guy whose kind of job is to be someone that uses physical force, but at the same time is constrained because whatever he does to somebody else, he's going to feel it immediately. There's no delay. Mm-hmm. Like as soon as he does it to somebody else, he feels it himself. So he's really careful not to break bones or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to be.
He always approaches with the padded gloves. That's one example that was compelling.
Yeah. Interesting. I have read 2 other series, but not that one, by Brandon Mull, the Fablehaven series, and what was the other one? Beyonders. But I haven't read the Candy Shop War. You recommend it? Is it good?
I like the first one a lot. I like the ending of the book a lot. Yeah, I recommend it.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out.
I don't know if you would like it.
Oh, what's that supposed to be, George?
You like grittier stuff, right?
No, not always.
You're more Brandon Sanderson than Brandon Mull.
Yes, that is absolutely true, but that doesn't mean I can't read both, right?
You might like it. You might like the Candy Shop War. There's a card in Magic the Gathering, too. I can't remember the name of it. It's like Visions of Torment or something. It's a relatively new card. I say relatively to you because you've not really played Magic in a long time.
Yeah.
But the idea is it's an enchantment. It's a creature enchantment. And so you put it on a creature that your opponent controls. And whenever that creature does damage, it does the damage to the controller as well, right? So a similar thing, which is an interesting concept, right? Because normally in Magic the Gathering, one of the simpler strategies is just to have some giant guy that steamrolls all of your opponent's guys.
Yeah.
And this undoes that, right?
Yeah, it's like a reverse Spirit Link.
Make this giant juggernaut, and then every time he goes out to steamroll, you are one of the steamrolled.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I haven't played since like 5th edition came out, I think. Been a long time.
So Wizards of the Coast or local game stores, if you want to sponsor our podcast, we welcome that too.
Send us some cards and I'll play.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do an episode where we play with your cards.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, I have played a little bit more recently. We did that one team activity. How many months ago was that? A few months ago?
I think it was last year.
Was it last year?
Was it last year? Can't remember now.
Might have been January.
It might have been January, yeah.
Yeah, we did that team activity where we had to make a deck out of like $5 and yeah. I did all right. I think I did well for somebody who did it on their own. Yeah,
for somebody that made their own deck.
The people who had the card shop owners make the deck for them destroyed me. Couldn't handle it.
Yeah, you're filthy casual.
Yeah, I know.
You deserve to lose.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. thought about taking my kids there to do something like that. It'd be a good, cheap activity, get them interested in card gaming maybe. I don't know. Card games are fun, but they are kind of expensive sometimes. But, doing a common deck like that where it's like a penny a card, that would be pretty fun, I think.
Yep, that's right.
You're still doing pretty much everything that you would do in an expensive deck, right? You're still strategizing. You still have to cut your, you have to take all the cards you want and cut it down to 60, and then you still play the game against somebody and test it out and see how well you did. So it's kind of like budget Magic the Gathering, but
yeah, you heard it here, folks. Game Grid in Lehigh. On the frontage road near Main Street, you can buy commons for a penny each. The unsorted commons, so you can buy any card there, of course.
There were even some uncommons in there that I was able to find.
Yeah.
Thank you, Game Grid.
You can find some uncommons in there, too. So, if you want to go slumming in the penny boxes, you can have commons at a penny each.
Oh, yeah. They had tons. We barely even went through like a tenth of the cards. We were there sorting through them for like an hour, so...
Yep.
Yeah, it was fun.
Best game store I know of in Lehigh, pretty much.
Pretty much, for sure. There was one called Gamers Inn. I told you about that one before, right?
Yeah, that one is on Main Street.
Except they moved somewhere. I don't remember where. Yeah, so they used to be west of like City Center on Main Street, right before it becomes the small, slow Main Street. I think they have moved over by the Costco area now, like in that shopping center east of the freeway. So
by Lowe's and Costco,
somewhere over there, like in that area. Yeah, I think they're over there. I was looking on the map the other day, and I noticed that. Well, so I noticed that it was gone when I drove past the area. Because my brother lives over by it now, at their old location. I noticed their signs were down, and I thought, oh man, maybe they closed down. But then I saw them on a map while I was looking around that area. So I think they moved, which is good. I'm glad they didn't close down if they...
Yeah, I think they're pretty popular. One of my neighbors, that's his preferred game store. I've been trying to get a stand-up desk at my new job.
Trying?
Yeah, they've not yet caught the vision of letting people stand up while they work. I mean, it's just some policy thing that nobody's really paying close attention to. So the way it works right now is you have to fill out a form that HR will give you where you're basically describing your disability. So they give you a stand-up desk under the terms of the Americans with Disability Act or something like that. Yeah, so you have to describe the nature of your disability and how it keeps you from performing your job function. And then they want a note from your doctor as well talking about your condition, which was fine. I'm fine with all of that. I mean, my perspective on disability in this country, right? So there are disabilities, there definitely are, or different abilities. I don't want to dicker over words. Anyway, there are blind people, clearly. There are paralyzed people, clearly. Right?
Indeed.
That need some accommodation if they're going to get to their place of work and perform their job function. And then you have people who are on disability, who might be blind or might be paralyzed, or they might just feel like they can't get any good jobs with their skill set, right? Mm-hmm. And there are doctors and lawyers that will help you to get on disability. Not that you're not able to do any work, just it's better for you so you can see it to be on disability. One of the advantages I know, or at least I've heard on NPR, is that when you're on disability, federal disability, you have health insurance, which I'd imagine is Medicaid.
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure. Whereas, so you get $1,000 a month or something like that, $13,000 a year on disability. So you could make that same money or maybe a little bit more at Walmart, but there's no way that you're going to have health insurance, right? So all things considered, it's better for you to be on disability than to work at Walmart or McDonald's or wherever. So that's what I mean when I say, disability is relative, and you can be disabled just by claiming you're disabled and having a lawyer and a doctor who will argue your disability for you. So I was perfectly comfortable saying, yes, I'm disabled and I need a stand-up desk. But my doctor was uncomfortable saying anything about disability. I sent an email to him, and I only corresponded with the receptionist, right, because doctors are busy.
Yeah.
But I submitted my request, that I wanted a stand-up desk for work so I didn't have to sit too much, and they wanted to say something about disability, and he was afraid of that. I got, a formal response back that my doctor could not attest to any disability and that I hadn't been assessed for any disability. He was just trying to protect himself from lawsuits around saying that somebody has a disability, which there aren't going to be any in this case, right? Maybe he thought I was part of an undercover Gephardt sting or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so I just let it go. I mean, I'm sure I can get a doctor, right? So medical marijuana is now available here in the state of Utah, and I imagine you can find a doctor without too much difficulty.
I mean,
who will sign a note for you that says you need medical cannabis.
Right. Before it was fully legalized in California, I knew people who could. I mean, I didn't know. I knew people who got a prescription from a doctor they had never met. Their services essentially where you could just say, "Hey, here's a check for $40. Send me a prescription," and no questions asked. The doctor would never see you, know nothing about you. You would get your prescription in the mail a few days later, and then you could take it to a dispensary and go buy it. So, I mean, if there's a need there, people are gonna find a way around the restrictions, right? Mm-hmm. So,
I got a cousin who's a doctor. I don't see him that often, but maybe the next time I do, I don't imagine he'll have any qualms about writing a note that says Jordan is disabled. Please give him a stand-up desk
and some medical marijuana. Get that too.
That's right. Jordan needs marijuana and a stand-up desk to perform his job functions. So in the meanwhile, there's other furniture in the office that I can use as a makeshift stand-up desk. It's just not as good, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm generally just putting my laptop on it, so I don't have the use of my larger screens, which I don't need to work. It's just, you can do more faster if you have more screen real estate.
Yeah. More
than a laptop gives you.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's one of my adventures. Kind of interesting.
How do you feel about tackling the subject of marijuana, Jordan?
Fine. I'm not a user of the marijuana.
Me neither. But what are your thoughts on medical versus full legalization versus complete ban?
I don't want the government to do too much. I mean, we need some laws, right? We can't have people battering their wives or husbands or children. We got to stop the violence thing. And then drug use, can border upon that because people use drugs and then their minds are altered and then they do stuff that they don't normally do. Or maybe they're worse, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're going to batter their family anyway. But I guess weed is more likely to mellow you out, right? I guess booze can mellow you out or make you angry. Don't know a whole lot about that. So it's a tricky issue for sure. So I guess where the law is concerned, I'm on the side of we should have laws that stop people from using mind-altering substances, just because I think that humans are irrational and hard enough to deal with as it is. Mm. So you alter their minds and it makes them worse.
But would you also consider things like antidepressants to be in the mind-altering category?
Yeah, I would. Anything that's mind-altering, right? So, and then there's the question, right? Once you have a law, then how do we enforce it? And what's the punishment? And that's a much harder, trickier, much bigger discussion to have, right? So I'll stop there. Should we have laws? Saying you can't have this stuff? Definitely. I think we definitely should. And they should make sense, right? I think, what is it, the FDA? I think they're the ones. There's a schedule, right, of drugs. Yeah. There's different categories of them. I think marijuana is in one of the more extreme categories,
right? Which
doesn't make any sense. But I guess politically you can't move it out of that category. Mm-hmm. And I guess politically you also can't add more science and reason to politics.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess not.
There's too much emotion.
Yeah. So I agree with you about, limiting government's influence on people's lives, especially if they're doing things that, are victimless, where they, even if they're harmful to the user, if they're not hurting anybody else, then I think that's an area where I generally want the government to be hands off, like, because you could say, oh, if marijuana is harming that individual, well, maybe drinking 64 ounces of soda every day is harming them too. Like, should we stop them from doing that? I see those as roughly equivalent, right?
Yeah.
They're both behaviors that aren't maybe the smartest or the healthiest, but you gotta let people live their lives the way they want to live them, as long as they're not harming others. So I tend to see marijuana as kind of like that, maybe not the healthiest choice, maybe not the smartest or the wisest thing, but I don't want to tell people that they can't do it, and I certainly don't want to throw them in a cage if they are caught doing it, right? So that's basically my stance. I would say full legalization, and I think it's kind of hypocritical to ban marijuana when it is, I consider it to be far less harmful and dangerous than alcohol, which we allow.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is not rational. And I think we have hard data, right, that the current way that we're enforcing those laws is not effective in curtailing substance abuse.
It's expensive. It gets people killed. It gets people thrown into jail. For example, there's a guy I actually grew up with in California. I didn't know him that well. He was older than me, but my brother was pretty good friends with him when they were younger. He ended up moving out here and joined law enforcement. And I don't remember how long ago it was. It was probably around 10 years ago. I remember seeing an article about him in the paper. He was killed in a drug raid. So basically they had I think it was a no-knock warrant. I don't remember. They had some kind of warrant where somebody was, reported for marijuana possession or usage or something. I don't remember all the details, but he basically showed up at the house at night and, kicked the door down, ran in, and there ended up being a gunfight in which he got shot and killed. And to me, sending in people with guns blazing the middle of the night because someone is growing or in possession of a plant that you don't like, that isn't hurting anybody, just seems completely absurd to me. That guy is dead. His kids are fatherless. His wife is widowed. And not just law enforcement, people who are users as well. I don't think, even if you disagree and think they shouldn't be using those drugs, they shouldn't be smoking marijuana or whatever, it seems completely ridiculous to use the level of violence to enforce it that we have been using it. People are dying because of that, and people are wasting away in a jail cell because they smoked something that the government doesn't like. And I think that is just absurd.
Yeah, it's extreme, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's lunchtime.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm pretty hungry. But it's been great talking to you, Jordan. We'll have to do this again.
Sure has. That wraps up the Timbo Slice podcast with Jordan, episode 1.
Stay tuned for episode 2.
Yeah, we might be more focused in the future when we figure out what this thing is about.
Yeah.
Or as sponsors approach us, right?
That's right.
Game Grid, if you approach us, this podcast will be about Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering.
Wouldn't it be awesome? Have you ever watched Ben Shapiro?
No.
Oh, so one thing that's funny that people kind of make fun of him for is in the middle of a podcast or an interview, he'll stop and be like 1 second, let's talk about your impending death. And then he does the whole commercial bit for Policy Genius. That's one of his sponsors, Policy Genius. He'd be like, everyone's going to die. You're going to die. You want to make sure you have life insurance to take care of your family, take care of your kids. But it's funny because he'll be in the middle of a discussion about leadership or politics or whatever. And he's like, on that note, let's talk about Policy Genius. We got to be able to do something like that. That would be hilarious, I think. Funny.
Or if Blue Yeti sponsors us,
Oh, yeah.
and we can have a podcast about podcasts.
Yeah.
Does
Hey, Blue Yeti, the audio quality on this podcast would be better if we had 2 microphones. Right now we're sharing one. But, if we had like 2 and some of those, like articulating arms that like put them right in front of your face, like, oh man, think about how much better this would sound, Blue Yeti. Yeah, it would be awesome.
Guess Mojang could sponsor us too. We could turn this into a Minecraft podcast. Or Brandon Mull or Brandon Sanderson could
Totally.
sponsor it. This could be a fantasy literature podcast.
Speaking of, I told Sean Van Busker, so he's. If you think I'm a big Brandon Sanderson fan, I am nothing compared to this guy.
Yeah, he says Cosmere, like without explaining to people what the Cosmere is. Like a normal person is going to know. Even a person that reads his books is not going to know.
A lot of people
is.
aren't Cosmere aware. I find that when I talk to other people, I'll mention like Hoyd or the Shards or whatever, and they're like, "What? Like, come on, man! You're reading all these books and you don't know what the Cosmere." But anyway, yeah. So he's super into that, and I told him one of these days he's gonna have to come on the podcast and we can talk Brandon Sanderson Cosmere stuff. That'll be great.
Yeah. Crossover fantasies or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all for today, folks.